Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Midlife Motivation. My name is Andrea. If this is your first time joining my channel, I am a 44-year-old full-time single mom, empowering other women to navigate their mid-40s. Life is not easy, especially if you're a parent, especially if you're single. So today I'm going to talk about dating again. I think it's an interesting topic because trying to date, especially when you're a mom and you're juggling all of life's activities, trying to find someone in your life to be a partner, to be a complement in your life is not easy. You have to go through a lot of frogs before you can meet someone. And I'm still looking for somebody that will fit into my lifestyle. And I think the narrative that we place in our minds helps us determine whether or not we're going to allow someone that is deserving in our lives. So one thing that I want to share is that I heard this the other day is to make your energy expensive. And when I read that, I said, wow, yeah, that is so true. We should be particular and very prescriptive about who we give our energy to. You know, you're living in your mid-40s, you're navigating all the things that you need to juggle in your day-to-day. The thing about being in your 40s is that you've had life experience. Either you've been working, you have a career established, or maybe you're changing careers. You may or may not have children, but you have certainly been around long enough to know what works for you and what doesn't. Difference is trying to figure out how to implement that in the best way possible so that it serves you. So when I read that and I said to myself, wow, you know what? I've already been treating myself that way and being particular about who I spend my time with. Sometimes I drop the ball and I give people my energy that don't deserve it, but you live and learn. And one of the things that's also beautiful about being in your 40s is learning the art of self-forgiveness, giving yourself grace. We spend a lot of our lives living in regret, not forgiving ourselves for the choices we make, and that's part of our life journey. You learn whether or not something is good for you, and if it isn't, it's okay. You take away from that what you will and how it can make you stronger and better in the future. So my dating experiences in the last few months have been pretty interesting, to say the least. I know a lot of people, do online dating. It sucks. It really does. It's really hard to meet somebody of quality. One of the first things that I look for in person is how they kick off a conversation. I try to match their energy. I don't exert too much if they're not really, interested in asking questions. But if your profile is out there and you have enough content for them to ask you questions and they're just asking you how your day is, they're probably not going to be a quality person to talk to. I mean, it's not the same for every single case, but how a person shows up in a conversation is probably going to be indicative of his interest level throughout the duration of that relationship if you end up in one. But I've been going to in-person events, which for me, I think is it's a lot more fun. We have the time for it, which I think people should. If you are, one of your priorities in your life is to meet somebody, one of the best ways is to talk and meet with people in person. And some of the events that I've been going to have been able me to make friends or just be able to see how people interact when you ask them questions that are important to you in person. And it's very, very telling. It's hard to gauge that when you're online and you don't get to see their facial expressions or their reactions to your questions, but it does give you that ability to gauge their authenticity and whether or not their value sets match yours. Trying to date people when you're older who haven't had relationship commitments in the terms of like marriage or, long-term relationships or kids, it doesn't work for me. That might work for other people. We all have different life circumstances. However, you want someone that shows that they have a history of commitment. That means that they're serious about relationships. I mean, your dating resume, I think, matters at this point. If somebody has just been jumping from person to person to person and has never been committed, it's important to ask why and not be afraid of that. We're so fixated on, is this person going to like me? No, that narrative needs to change to, am I going to like this person? Is this person good enough to fit into the ideal partner that I want in my life? Because when you start framing it that way, you're going to be a lot more selective and find the red flags that don't work for you right away. I went actually on a speed dating event. You had 8 minutes, 8 people. I was not sure I was going to be able to survive all those conversations, but they actually go by really fast. You don't have a lot of time to figure out whether or not someone's a good fit for you. But one of the best ways to gauge if someone's value sets align with yours is to ask them questions that matter to you. So for me, like I said, what's your relationship history? I've had guys in their early 50s, early 40s. I would say, oh, never been married, don't have kids. Okay, you want to know why? Okay. And you don't want to make them feel interrogated. Of course, you don't want to come across like you're judging them. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, I want to know why. And a lot of these folks will respond and be extremely vague. You can kind of tell by their body language and their reactions if they have something to hide and they're not willing to be forthcoming about that. I had one guy who was so nice and sweet, and he was very forthcoming about his history. To me, that said a lot. It said that he had nothing to hide, and this is why that relationship didn't work. He didn't speak ill of his ex and spoke about what he was looking for. To everybody, that should be important. Why are those people not willing to come forth with their history? And we've all done really crappy things in our lives to treat others less than they deserve. But when you're forthcoming and you take accountability for that and you've done a lot of self-work, it's going to reflect in the way the person describes themselves, their history. The more they're willing to share that, the more that they'll be willing to share with you as dating them progresses. I found it really, really intriguing to be able to ask these people those types of questions in person, and it immediately shifted the energy. So if that person was tense, you feel that. It becomes a little bit awkward, like, okay, so you're not going to expand on that. Cool. At that point, I start to disengage and just let them ask questions. When you're sitting face to face with somebody and you start to lose interest, the best way to just sit there in that awkwardness where you're like, I'm not interested anymore, but we still have 6 more minutes, is to just let them carry the conversation. You can be polite, you don't have to be rude, but you can be direct enough to, to show, okay, well, this isn't going to go anywhere because what you've shared just doesn't work with me. Or you can tell them that directly. I think being direct is one of the other things about being older that empowers us to be able to deliver better. I mean, some folks, it's hard for them to be straight up and honest because you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, but you're doing a disservice to yourself and to the other person when you just can't be straight up and honest. And it's not even personal on such a deep level. It's like, you know what, this isn't going to work. And every single interaction, it is like an interview. You don't have to be so stiff about it, but you can gauge and be able to discern whether or not that person's personality or what they have to share or anything that they have going on in their lives is going to be something you're going to be interested in learning more about just in a few minutes. So I highly recommend going to in-person dating opportunities, whether it's an event or speed dating. It definitely helps you weed out a lot more people in a shorter amount of time. You get ready, for women, it's a production to get ready. We have hair, we have makeup, we got to pick our outfit. Imagine, you do that multiple times to meet people. Well, you do that for one night and you meet multiple people and you might make a match. You never know. I mean, being optimistic is definitely something that's really important. You can't go in there assuming that, okay, no one's going to be a match because you never know. You might make a friend out of it, or you just might get a better experience talking and figuring out how to navigate those conversations. And I'm hoping that I can help other women feel empowered to use your voice. Like, we're older, we know what to say, we know what we want. Use that to your advantage and how you navigate these conversations with men. And men, from what I'm hearing too, they are wanting to know what your intentions are. Like, what do you want? If you're just looking for something casual, if you're looking for something serious, if you don't want to get married, those are things that are really important to be upfront about, because otherwise you don't want to find out later down the road that your goals were not aligned. Then you're having to navigate being attached to that person, not wanting to let go, and you go back and forth for a while, you break up, you get back together again. That's exhausting. No one wants to do that. Honestly, I'm still in the mode of I love taking myself out to dinner, just having a mommy break and coming back home and being relaxed. I'm not being disappointed by anybody, and it's a really good feeling. One of the really interesting ways or key factors in determining if that person's a red flag is to tell if you have a situation or if something they do or say makes you feel icky inside. It doesn't sit well with you. It gnaws at you. That's your body telling you, okay, I don't like the way this person made me feel when they said XYZ. And if you tell them in a very pragmatic manner or, calm, emotionally controlled manner, how they respond to you says everything you need to know about them. Trust me when I tell you this. If a person is dismissive, they mock you, they belittle or dismiss what you have to say, red flag, get out. Don't, because the bigger things that you're going to experience or the bigger feelings you're going to have when you go through that relationship, they're going to diminish that even more. And at that point, it's going to hurt even more. And you're going to be arguing about how they treated you versus what the actual problem was. I've caught signs of that early in, an interaction. I wouldn't even say dated him. We went on a couple of dates and how he treated me, how I felt. I expressed it. I feel safe about it. And immediate response was, oh, geez, like, and then totally, like, didn't even acknowledge how I felt. That's not okay. That's never okay. And vice versa. If somebody tells you how they feel, you can either be dismissive or you can respect that. You don't even have to agree, but acknowledging that is part of, being kind to other people. It is hard to find people like that. Not gonna lie. It's worth waiting for, though. I will tell you that. It is worth waiting for the guy that'll be like, you know what, that I'm sorry that my actions made you feel that way. That was not in my intent. Let's talk about it, et cetera, et cetera. Having that kind of connection, honestly, bonds you closer together. It's worth to wait for that person. But that is a really, really good way to gauge if someone is a good fit, period. Nothing else. And I would suggest doing that sooner than later. How they respond to you having a social life outside of them and, male friends. If you have male friends, now let me clarify. If you got platonic male friends where there is no weird awkwardness, where you hook up sometimes and your friends with benefits, all that, okay, that's not cool. Like you should, if you're trying to enter into a relationship with someone, if you're still having shenanigans with someone else, you will be honest about it. Coincidentally, one of my buddies was dropping me messages while I was in a car with someone. I was dating her for not long. Again, this was pretty short. And he just demonstrated signs of jealousy and insecurity very quickly. He didn't even approach it with, oh, who's your friend? Just curious to know what kind of relationship. He belittled me, sent me a message. He saw his name come down the screen. And again, I have nothing to hide. So my buddy messaging me, I don't think anything of it. And it wasn't until later that I realized, wow, that's a really good way to gauge if a guy is confident in himself. We'd met up, he saw those messages, he texted me a few minutes later, and after he parted ways, just so we're clear, and mind you, we already had the discussion about exclusivity. I was like, okay, yes, I don't want to date anyone else, I just want to date you, these are my value sets. I'm a sincere person, I don't say crap I don't mean, but even though we had this level setting conversation, he sends me a text, I only date one person at a time, just so we're clear. I don't want somebody that dates around and it's giving other people attention. It's like, oh, okay, we are insecure and we need to, see how he responds. We did end up talking on the phone, and despite what I told him, without saying it, he wanted me to not be friends with my buddy. So no, that's not happening. And mind you, he was telling me the other day how he's still friends with a woman he was actively sleeping with in the last month or two. I'm still talking to her, but I'm going to cut it out. Okay. So yeah, the hypocrisy. So, get to know people, ask the hard questions, be direct and upfront, and be confident and ready to walk away and be okay to walk away, because a lot of people they have an agenda. They don't care about your genuine needs, and there are genuine people out there. It's a matter of just being patient, letting the universe or God, whatever it is you believe in, bring them across your path. But, when you keep doing you and you remind yourself that your energy is expensive, it's going to be worth the wait. I promise. I'm still happily single and navigating life and doing mom things and keeping my happy cup filled. I know I've said that before in my other videos, but I think it's so important. Filling that happy cup and keeping it full and keeping all the negative away that takes away from that happy cup. It's important to recognize those things because you don't want to deplete the happy cup. You want to keep it full as much as possible. So I hope that if you're listening to this, that it's helped you gain more confidence in navigating the dating world as a woman in your mid-40s. It's not easy, and you're not alone. You're not alone. And I love to hear people's stories. So thank you so much for listening. As I always say, love yourself first. Bye.